Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, and today is going to be a pretty fun video because we're going to be going over my top 10 players on my trade bait list. Now, if you did not know already, I released my top 20, but in this specifically, we're going to go through each player, why they could be traded, why they might not be traded, who they could go to, and really what the positives and negatives are to trading for them. Yes, we're going to get into pretty much everything good about the trade deadline and what these players could bring to their possible new teams. But if you haven't already, make sure you go like, subscribe, ring that bell, comment. I want to hear what all of you have to say because this is going to be a very fun time in hockey right now. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into the video. Okay, first who we're going to be starting off with is Nazem Kadri. Yes, the tenacious center who, although is 35 years old, still has tons to bring to a playoff team, and I don't really think that's much of a surprise. Now, when you look back to his time with the Colorado Avalanche and how impactful he was, I mean, any team would be so interested to have him on there. And since then, he's still been very good. Like, this is a guy who almost has 800 career points. This season, 39 in 56. He still brings a physical side. But the only real downside to Nazem Kadri is not his game, but his contract. Yes, he is in the fourth year of a 7-year, $7 million contract that was signed back in 2022-23 when Brad Treliving was with the Calgary Flames. And yeah, not many teams want to take this on, and I don't really blame them. Now, yeah, of course, age plays a factor into this as well, so maybe it is him as a player, kind of, but not really. But yeah, like, he is still a very efficient and solid player when it comes to everything considered. Now, 67 points last year, 75 the year before that, and the Flames were a lot better, a couple of years ago, and no wonder we're seeing a little bit of decline in points. That comes with age as well, but this is also with him playing at about 14 minutes, just under 15 minutes actually, and that's not too bad at all, considering 5v5 gameplay and how much he is producing in points per 60, which is 1.72. Again, not too shabby. Nazem Kadri is always going to be a very interesting player, but it's really more about what he can bring to your lineup, right? He brings that nastiness. He brings that kind of I'm in your face effect. Well, he can still produce offensively. Well, he can still do a lot more, even when it's getting into those tough areas like corners where not a lot of good players want to go. He's going to be able to do that. So if you have him as your 2C, for example, on a playoff team, yeah, that's not a guy you probably want to play against, especially with how he was in Toronto, how he was in Colorado, winning a cup, how he's been in Calgary. What Nazem Kadri has really been able to bring has just been positives throughout his career. Is that really much of a surprise? Well, I mean, when you look back to his time in Toronto, I mean, it wasn't too great in the playoffs considering everything because, he did have his moments. But I do think the Leafs are kicking themselves to that and trading him away. And yeah, I mean, that's a pretty fair one to not be very happy about when it comes to not having him anymore. But Nazem Kadri sits at easily number one on my trade bait list. I think there are teams who are definitely considering going to get him. But again, the Montreal Canadiens were one of them, and I think that the $7 million and still 3 years left or 3.5 years left at this point on his contract really does scare them. And I don't think Calgary is too eager to go and retain on a contract like that. So we'll see how it is. But going from one center to another to number 2, Vincent Trocheck on my trade bait list. Now, 32 years old, a little younger than Nazem Kadri, but also way better contract. Yes, he's still in the 4.5-year range of his contract, but at 5.625, that is a real good stuff. And considering that his contract ends when he's 35 years old, this is amazing for whatever team wants to go and get him. Now, for Vincent Trocheck, it is a little bit of a slippery slope. Like, we'll go back to Nazem Kadri here. Like, compared to Nazem Kadri, who has a no movement clause on his side, there is a partial kind of area for him. Or modified no trade clause when it comes to his teams, and we'll see it right here, 12 teams, 12 team no trade list, excuse me. So there is some flexibility compared to a guy like Nazem Kadri, who still has that, but I guess 13 is a little more. It's the one more team, so there is that. But at the same time, Vincent Trocheck, very effective player. We saw him at the Olympics and how good that he was able to be on faceoffs and how good he was on the forecheck and the back check. I mean, he was a stable part of that bottom six, along with guys like Dylan Larkin, who also did a pretty good job at center. He's not going to be traded anytime soon, but again, just talking about people in the bottom six who did a good job playing a certain role. And I think that Trocheck, although won't be in that bottom six for most teams going after him, he can still play a 2C role very well. He can still produce. He has 36 and 43 games. Considering how bad the Rangers have been this year, he's been getting a lot more time for the most part, like still sitting at just over 15 minutes, on the year in terms of what he's been able to do. Like, that's not an amazing amount, but as a 2C, that's very doable. And considering that he'll probably get a little bit more time on it, for example, like a team like Minnesota, who I think wouldn't be in the worst kind of thought to go and trade for him. He'll be doing a decent amount, maybe even playing 1C and kind of juggling that with a guy in Joel Eriksson-Ek. But it's so intriguing for a guy like Vincent Trocheck, which is why I kind of want to put him at 1, because of how easily digestible this contract is for a team who might be strapped to cap, and keeping him for the future. Because remember, this isn't just a rental guy. This is a guy you're going to have at 5.625. Again, very good for the next 3 years after this season till 28-29 when he's 35 years old. So, you could see a little bit of a drop off, but the point production is still there. Like, even when we go and look at what he's been able to do over the last couple of seasons, he obviously had his high in 23-24, same as Nazem Kadri, 77 points this time for Vincent Trocheck. Much more of a playmaker than a scorer. High of 25 goals also in that year, but if you date back to 2017-18, he had 31 for actually 75 points that year. So, still can contribute on both sides of the puck, but on top of what he's been able to do for the Rangers, he has that playoff experience, he has that leadership, and it's probably going to fetch a good penny for the Rangers, and I would expect it to at least start at a first. I don't think that's crazy, considering the center market is not great, but it might be 2 firsts worth, depending on what the Rangers are asking, maybe even more. Like, I'm not surprised with how kind of shallow the center market is. But yeah, I mean, Vincent Trocheck, he would be my next guy on here. Very, very, very easily would be the player to watch out for being traded. Next, Justin Faulk. We'll go away from the centers a bit here to the St. Louis Blues, and he won't be the only Blue on this list that won't be, or that will be mentioned, excuse me. But yeah, Justin Faulk, right-handed defenseman, right shot. You don't have many of those in the NHL these days, especially on the market. And yeah, he's 35 years old, but has played pretty well and has a little bit of term, he's 33 years old. He's going to be ending his contract when he's 35. But still has some term at $6.5 million. A little bit of a pretty penny. But when you consider that he can play in your top 6, possibly on your top pair, that's not as bad. Now, 30 points in 57 games. He's been able to produce pretty decently, again, on a Blues team that has been pretty terrible. And, I mean, if you're looking at that as someone who's looking to improve their D-core, that's a pretty intriguing thing on top of the many others, especially, and I will very much make this a topic, is that he's right-handed, a right-handed right-shot defenseman. Very much a big thing in this market, and will be getting the top dollar if traded at this deadline. And now, the Blues don't have to do this. They could wait till next year when he's going to be a free agent, maybe a little bit more intriguing for those teams who don't want money long-term and really can't handle that. But yeah, for Justin Faulk, this is a guy who's going to be playing over 17, 18 minutes a game, on average, of course. And yeah, he's playing 18:03 on average this season. He's going to get you some points. He's not going to be that 2020 to 2023 guy who's going to get you maybe like, 50 to like 35 to 50 points. And that's actually what he was doing. 50 right here in 22-23, 47 in the year before. Obviously played less games, but had 25 there. He's an effective defenseman and can be for that. And of course, but yeah, can produce, has that playoff pedigree, and can do what you need him to do in a guy in Justin Faulk. Not many defensemen like him on the market. So yeah, there's going to be a couple of teams lining up. But I think there's a lot of other guys that may be a little bit, not worse, but cheaper, and we'll get into one of them, but I think another guy you could probably look at is like a Brandon Carlo, Mackenzie Weegar. I don't know how, much both of those sides are looking to really move on from them. Like a Weegar, I think it's heating up a bit more. Carlo, I think the Leafs are still in that tough area, even though that they lost 2 in a row here in Florida. How's that going to look? I still think they should sell, but of course he has terms, so do you really want to get rid of a defenseman compared to a different guy that might be worth more? We'll see. Going back to Calgary here, and a guy in Blake Coleman, who really did rev up the trade market a couple of weeks ago, when it came to the Montreal Canadiens and prior to the Olympic break. Now, there's so many reasons why you would want a guy like this on your team. He can chip in the odd point, 21 points in 44 games, especially considering that he's been in that bottom 6 for the Calgary Flames. He's 29 years old, and he has a year left after this at 4.9. So it's not terrible. Of course, he is 34, so you do have to do some type of a balancing act in this case. But yeah, like you look at a guy like Blake Coleman and you say, okay, can I fit him on my team? Does it make sense for him to come on my team? Now, he does have again, this is another guy with a modified no trade, 10 teams that he does not want to go to, but what we've seen from a guy in Blake Coleman when put in the right position, last year almost 40 points, the year before 54, almost 40, almost 35 the year before, and winning with the Tampa Bay Lightning, being able to have that experience to play in those positions, know what to do, know when to do it. He is the perfect guy to have that there. And I don't think Kent Hughes and everyone considered with the Montreal Canadiens is looking at him and saying, okay, like now we don't want him, but at the same time, he is a decently valuable asset. Now, are the Calgary Flames willing to retain this year into next year? I don't think that's crazy that they wouldn't, but at 4.9, do you really want to be retaining half of that when you're trying to do what they say is a retool? They kind of say it's a rebuild. They say it's not. It is what it is. But for Blake Coleman and the Calgary Flames, I think it's interesting to see what team is going to go and grab him, what team is going to pony up in this case, if that really is considered to be ponying up in this case. But yeah, for a guy like Blake Coleman, has all the intangibles that you're looking for, can contribute in the bottom 6, knows what to do, has the experience, it's kind of a no-brainer in this way to go after him and say, yeah, I wouldn't mind having a guy like Blake Coleman on my team and making it work from a cap standpoint. I don't know how much you'd want to pay for him. Just his experience alone might cost you a bit, and even with his production, even though it's kind of been a little bit less than I guess you're hoping this year, even though Calgary's been terrible, I still think him on the wing of a pretty good playoff team makes a lot of sense. And I wouldn't be surprised if, some team is going to go grab him for, let's just say it's like a second. Just to say, for example, but I guess we're going to have to see how that looks, especially with retention. And then there's Dougie Hamilton. Yeah, it has been a tough couple of years, honestly, in New Jersey for him. He's a right-handed defenseman that can play on your top pair if needed, preferably, probably, in my opinion, the top 4. But at $9 million in this season and next, so let's just say for 2 years, not even including this season, that is a tough contract to swallow if you are any GM in this league. No question. And that shouldn't be crazy to say. Look, Dougie Hamilton is a pretty interesting player. Now, he has a no movement clause, also a modified no trade. He's open to being traded. They've talked about this, but they kind of need him right now in some case to perform some duties. But even when you look at what he's been able to do over the last couple of seasons, this guy has been a Band-Aid. He has the one full season that he's had with the New Jersey Devils was back in 22-23, which was his second season, 82 games played, and he had 74 points. He was really good. If you don't remember, the Devils were really good that year as well. Other than that, he's been pretty much stapled to the medical table and hasn't really been able to produce. He had that 40-point season back in last year in 2024-25, 40 points. He had 31 at Apples in 64 games, not too shabby. And he wasn't really playing that much. Like, he was almost playing 16 minutes a night, so it wasn't top pairing minutes. But his inconsistencies, right? Like, is he reliable? Is the contract worth it? No, the contract is definitely not worth it. It was more worth it when he was back in Carolina, even when he was missing all those games, because 5.75 is a lot better than $9 million. Even with the cap going up, it's not worth trading for him. Now, I can, even in that breath, that same breath that I just said, not worth trading for him, there are going to be teams that are going to see him and say, look, this guy's had 74 points in a season. At one point was considered one of the better defensemen in the league. I'm not saying top 5. I'm not even saying top 10. Just one of the better defensemen, and can skate, can move a puck. And sometimes you need that. At $9 million, no. But with some retention, maybe. It really just depends on what team is going to pony up here and say, yeah, I want to take on this contract, especially for the next 2 years. That's a lot. That's a lot to take on, and a big risk, no matter what GM you are, no matter if you're rebuilding or not, right? Like, that's a lot of money that you have to consider for your team. Now, there was a lot of things that people were trying to figure out. One, the San Jose Sharks were interested in Dougie Hamilton. Apparently the Maple Leafs have checked in on him. I hope not. I would not want to see something like that. Now, would he go to a team like San Jose? It sounds like he's more open to it. And I really do wonder if that could be for more of a depth pickup for the New Jersey Devils, or maybe just something to toughen up their back end. So maybe like a guy like Mario Ferrero, who's always been rumored in a lot of these trades. I guess we'll have to see. But I don't see the San Jose Sharks wanting to give him up too much either. Like, he is on their trade block, but again, they do like him. So it's kind of a slippery slope in San Jose, right? They're looking to improve their decor, but they don't want us to be, taking away too much, and things have worked pretty decently this year. So do you do it? Do you not? Right? So Dougie Hamilton is such an interesting piece, and one guy that at the end of the day, if you're going to go trade for him, you need a plan, right? There's $9 million for the next 2 years, as I mentioned, and as I keep saying, is not a small chunk of change, right? The cap. 11.04% of the New Jersey Devils cap space. That's a decent chunk of change. But we'll turn to a guy who's kind of made his name a little bit more public over the last bit for the Vancouver Canucks, and has been involved in a couple of trade talks, and that's Evander Kane. And look, I think there are a lot of jokes about Evander Kane and, what he really brings to a team, right? Like, he can produce points. He has that physical side. He has that agitator side. But that agitator side, and yet again, I'll say the same line in the same breath, also is said to be in the room as well. And that's not something that you want for a team that's trying to win. Now, Evander Kane, we'll call a spade to spade. He has been able to be productive, in his years past. 44 points in 77 games when he was with Edmonton. In San Jose, not too long ago, almost 50 points, 56 in San Jose the years before. He's been able to do it. Now, this is a long time ago, but it's not to say that he still can't be an effective middle six forward in your lineup, on your third line, if so second, depending on what you want to do with him. And for the Vancouver Canucks, that's essentially what he is. Well, he's actually a first-line winger. I'm pretty sure, depth chart. He's the first-line winger right now, or at least projected as that. But there are things that you need to consider. At 5.2 or 5.125, just for this year, he's going to be a UFA. He's expiring at 34 years old. If you can get him at half retained, then that's not terrible. And at the end of the day, I think it's worth it in some capacity. I think there are some teams that have checked in on him. Dallas is one of them, and I wouldn't be totally against him going there, considering that they do need a little bit more of size in that bottom six. And that's not to say that they can't get through some teams, but it seems like they'll get to that certain point and they won't be able to get past. We've seen that with Edmonton in the last couple of years, with Evander Kane on that team, but of course he wasn't really the only guy who was making the difference, but he does play a factor, right? So I can't speak to what he's like in the room. You can only hear from rumors and that he's been not great, but there is the positives and negatives to these trades, right? He does bring some scoring. He brings definitely some physicality and some and is that agitator on the ice, but what is he like in the room? What is he going to be like on game days, right? I can't speak from experience, only from what you hear, right? So it's going to be an interesting one. I think he does get traded. That's why he's so high on my list. But we'll see. And a guy who's also high on my list, I think, gets traded, and it just hasn't really worked out. And it's a 2-year contract. It's at $3.6 million, so it's not terrible. But Andrew Mangiapane, he signed this back in the summer. There's a couple places that he was looking to go to. I think Toronto was also one of them. And I was honest, I was kind of excited to see what he could have been like here in Toronto. But if this is what it would have been like, then that would have just piled on more about how bad of a season it was in Toronto. So, he's in Edmonton now. 12 points in 50 games, only 6 of those being goals. And this wasn't one of those things where he wasn't getting a chance, right? Like, he started in the top 6 on the Edmonton Oilers, playing with guys like Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, Zach Hyman, and it wasn't where he wanted to be. I guess he's just not comfortable there, or maybe he doesn't feel that connection. He feels like he's lagging a bit behind. And yeah, I mean, from what we see on his stats, it hasn't been great. Now, this has definitely plummeted to what it was at the start of the season, but just under 12 minutes a night. This is not where you need a guy like this. He is a scorer. We've seen that in his past. Not too long ago, he had back-to-back 40-point seasons for the Calgary Flames, goes to Washington, and then has 28, right? He wasn't being used amazing, in my opinion, in Washington. And the same thing went for Edmonton, but this has been more of a, it just hasn't worked out kind of thing. It hasn't been the right fit. And I still think you can be or have that guy in your lineup. Like, even before the 2 back-to-back 40-point seasons, talk about triple, because he had the 55-point season the year before in Calgary. Like, he's always been a pretty productive player. 35 goals that year too, as well. Has more or less been pretty consistent on both sides of the puck. And for a guy who can be a playmaker, who can score, who can rip a puck, teams looking for scoring, I don't think this is the worst flyer type of guy to take a bet on, right? We talked about this a couple of years ago, or at least last year, with a guy in Jeff Skinner. Same guy who didn't really work out in Edmonton at all. Definitely did not work out this year in San Jose, as he's now a free agent. But yeah, like, it's not the worst guy to take a flyer on, especially if you can do something with that money. Like 3.6, if you can move some contracts around. I don't see Edmonton wanting to choose some of that salary on their end. I just don't see it. It's probably not going to happen. But it's one contract to look at. I don't think it's the worst one in the world on this top 10 list. And he's a good player. He can produce. It's just, I think he just needs a new change of scenery, if that makes sense. But a guy who maybe doesn't really need a change of scenery, or I guess has that choice, is Ryan O'Reilly. Yes, the 35-year-old who feels like he's been everywhere and nowhere at once. $4.5 million for the rest of this season, and next year he'll be 36 when his contract is up. 56 points in 57 games, almost a point per game at this age on the Nashville Predators of all teams. Now, Ryan O'Reilly is an interesting case. Can he be your 2C? Like, I would say so. I mean, he's been able to do it on the Nashville Predators, and he's so good on faceoffs. He's a leader. He's proven to win, and again, still has that scoring touch. So when you look at a guy like Ryan O'Reilly and maybe what he can bring to your lineup, he's going to be a pretty good piece, one that's going to fetch a hefty price, and I don't blame the Nashville Predators for asking for a lot from him and pretty much saying, hey, look, we like you enough for you to stay here. Tell us if you want to go or where to go. Now, at the end of the day, I think it's a business, and if you get a price that you like, I get there's the respect side, and the other, like, I think sometimes you kind of got to take that. But if this is where we're going from here, yeah, Ryan O'Reilly very, very much is a piece that many teams are going to be going after. 56 this year, 53 and 69 the year before. Pretty productive in his time in Nashville, considering everything, considering the expectations. Obviously 11 and 13 with the Maple Leafs back in their run when they had him. 9 and 11 when those playoffs that year. I do miss him as a Leaf. I didn't want to stay, obviously, because of the media stuff. Many players just don't like that, and I don't blame them. Now, for a guy like Ryan O'Reilly, as I mentioned, this guy is going to be on the ice for big faceoffs, definitely in front of the net presence, and leadership. You know what I mean? Like, he won with the St. Louis Blues back in 2019. He's been able to foster success throughout his career, no matter when he was winning or when he was not winning, when he was traded, when he was on a different team. He's been so good. And yeah, are they asking a decent amount for a guy that's playing just over 14 minutes a night? Yeah, but he's been so productive. He's been so good. He's been put in positions to succeed, granted, but he's been so good. And I don't think it's crazy to say that you should be paying a lot for a guy like this, and teams will be paying a lot for a guy like this. So yeah, Ryan O'Reilly, I do think could get traded. I think it's a 50-50 right now, because at the end of the day, they've given him the choice to do that, right? We'll look back at it right here. There is no clauses on this contract, right? This is just a team honoring him and saying, look, we like you. We think you're a good player. That's why we signed you. If we're going to be trading you, we're going to run it by you, and this is the team, this is the offer, et cetera, et cetera. So Ryan O'Reilly, another center on this list, and we're going to go to another one, number 9, Elias Pettersson. So the Vancouver Canucks are not willing to retain any money on his $11.6 million contract. That's in year 2 of 8. He's going to be 33 when this contract expires. It's been an interesting year for him. I think he's been better. I think his game has rounded out more. 35 points in 50 games is not the $11.6 million that you're expecting. But again, the Vancouver Canucks are also terrible. Now, at the end of the day, he hasn't, at least I don't think, I could be forgetting here, but he has not outright requested a trade out. And his clause, no movement throughout the whole deal. So, do I blame them for signing it at the time? I mean, it was definitely a risk, but giving him the no movement, you're expecting to be a little bit better than you have been this year and the year before. But you're hoping that you can get back to what he was, right? 102 points in 22-23 for the Vancouver Canucks in 80 games. Now, the next year he has 89 and 82. Okay, it's a contract year. A lot going on in the mind. Vancouver was interesting. We'll put it that way. Last year, 45 and 64. Not great in the first year, and 35 in 50 this year. For Elias Pettersson, it's always going to be interesting in how he produces, how he does things, and his process to, just his game. I don't really know what to make of it. Elias Pettersson is such an interesting player where you hope and beg for so much from this guy, and you kind of get the opposite. Elias Pettersson isn't this two-way, crazy good Alexander Barkov guy. Right now, he's not that playmaking offensive wizard. Right now, he's not that totally defensive centerman. He's kind of just in that murky middle, which is a little scary, to be honest, if you're a team trying to take on this contract at $11.6 million with a no movement clause. But you see what he's done in the past, right? Not too long ago either. He has potential. We're not stupid. None of us are stupid here. If you're watching this video right now, we're not sitting here and saying Elias Pettersson sucks and can't get back to where he can. Is he going to get back to 102 pace? No. But if you can get him to, let's just say 80 points every year, that's not bad. I would take that considering everything. Is it $11.6 million? No. But if he can be your 1C, 2C on a good team, and he's consistent, and you're just hoping for consistency, is it worth it? I think GMs are considering that. No, that's not like I'm putting out big news, new news here. Of course teams are considering it. Of course GMs are considering it. But are you going to get back that same old guy? No. But you could see something similar. You could. And I think that's what's really intriguing for him. And the last name here, I made a video on this on my Instagram, Jordan Binnington. Now, this year has been awful for Jordan Binnington. A goal saved above expected of -24. He has an 864 in the season, a 365 goals against in 32 games. This is not the goaltender that we've experienced from the past. The more or less consistent, goaltender that we've come to expect in big moments. Now, we saw that at Four Nations last year. He was still, like last year, he had a 900. Right, on the year. I think before, when we were kind of leading up to it, everyone was like, don't start him. And then he made massive saves and won Canada the Four Nations. This year, even worse, like genuinely even just so terrible. Gives Canada a chance to win the whole time. They won silver, but he was good. And GMs and players and everyone in the hockey media will keep coming back and saying, look, his stats face value are awful. But if you're going to get Jordan Binnington, who is showing up in the big moments when we need him, might be worth it. Now, this is where it gets a little complicated. Jordan Binnington, of course, we know he is a little bit inconsistent at times. He's at $6 million. Not for a long time, the rest of this season and next year. That complicates things, right? Now, the St. Louis Blues could say, like, hey, we'll cover $3 million. Why not? But apparently the price is already very high. Like, very high. Which, if you are a competing team, that's a little bit nerve-wracking. And it's not like he's very, very old. He's going to be 33 once this contract expires. He's 32 right now. But do you want to be paying all of those assets? Well, now we kind of come back to the clutch factor, right? Does Montreal need a guy like him? They lose again 4-3 in overtime. I will say it. Samuel Montembeault did fight, but this guy could get you pretty far. The Carolina Hurricanes. Goaltending has always been a problem. Now they signed Brandon Bussi, who's been good, granted, this year. Decent contract. Frederik Andersen, his injury problems, his inconsistencies. Kochekov's not going to even be around. Do you play around with that idea? Okay. Then we go to Edmonton. Tristan Jarry, an 864 in the season. Very similar year in terms of when he's gotten to Edmonton. 6-4-1. A lot of those wins led by guys like Connor McDavid, I think above like a 3.5 goals against. Do you yet again make a move for a goaltender? That's definitely a risk. I think I rated that like a 6.5 out of 10 on Team Fit because it's just like, do you go and do that again? I don't know if you do. Like, I genuinely don't know if you do go and do that, right? So if you're a guy like Jordan Binnington, right? Like his contract, he has a partial or a modified no move, 10 teams. What those teams are, I don't know. Or 14 in this year. So what those teams are, I don't know, right? Like, it depends on where he wants to go. If he's where he wants to be comfortably, does he really, really want to win? So maybe he just takes a team off that list that he says, I think I like their chances more of winning, so I'm just going to take that off. It's one thing to look at for Jordan Binnington, but at the end of the day, right, like, it's Armstrong's deal, right? Like, does he feel like he might get a better price for him next year? I don't think so. If there's a market for him right now, especially after these Olympics, right? Like, he's having a bad season. And these Olympics skyrocketed and put him back in the face of owners, GMs, players, teams, everyone to say, look, yeah, you know what? His stats have not been great, but he yet again showed up in big moments, which teams everywhere covet more than just some random game in November on a Tuesday or random game in February on a Wednesday or whatever, and say, if he can get me through a Game 7, a Game 6, Eastern Conference Final, Stanley Cup Final, whatever, yeah, I want Binnington in net. John Cooper said all the time, he's always been my guy the last 300 and what was it? It was like 65 last year, 365 days. Like, he said, that's my guy every time. I guarantee you many other people are thinking that. So we'll see how it goes. I'm genuinely interested to see how a guy like Jordan Binnington could fare on this market, what he could fetch, and what teams, honestly, he might be going to, or might want other teams for him to be like, hey, like, I'm willing to come to you. I think if the ones that he has on this list are probably going to be pretty good. But yeah, that was the last one I wanted to talk about. Obviously, that was the top 10 list of all the guys laid out there. And then there's the other 10 of Warren Fogle, Luke Schenn, Braden Schenn, double brother there, Bobby McMahon, Shane Wright, Boone Jenner, Connor Murphy, Rasmus Ristolainen, Logan Stanley, and Robert Thomas. Now, Austin, I will answer your question right now. Of course, I'll still comment on it. But a guy in Robert Thomas, I don't know if he should be top 5 when it comes to the trade bait list. I maybe should have clarified a little bit more. This is not, I don't know if he's thinking like this, but this is not ranking by the best players, obviously. But the maybe more likelihood of them being traded. If Robert Thomas is to be traded, right? That has to be a pretty substantial, like a substantial offer by an NHL team. He is a very good player. I think one of the more underrated players, honestly, in this league right now. It'd have to be a pretty big offer. I don't see that coming to fruition. Of course, teams have checked in because the Blues suck and everyone's on the table, and we've seen 4 Blues on the trade list, and there's probably more. So maybe I should have clarified a bit more. Hopefully that answers the question. If you watch this, I will still comment, of course. But yeah, like it is really more of the likelihood of it happening compared to anything else. But yeah, that is the last thing I wanted to talk about for the video. If you have not already, make sure you can go like, subscribe, ring that bell, and comment. I wanted to hear what all of you have to think about my takes on these players, who you think I was right about, wrong about, what you like, what you dislike, pretty much anything in this video, or who you think is going to get traded and for what. I'm going to be releasing the trade lists and everyone and mock trades that you all submitted and all that fun stuff on my story. So that should be a pretty fun post to put together. But of course, till next time, my name is Zach Staden, and we'll be talking soon.